Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of the History of FEBCO. And today before we start, I'd like to thank Bill with Antique Sprinklers for working with me to make this FEBCO project so well supported and well documented. Antique Sprinkler shows us the rich history of FEBCO, while Old School Sprinkler shows us what it was like to repair and maintain the older FEBCO equipment, some of which we'll see here today. I hope you all caught and enjoyed Bill's cameo appearance in part 1. And before I begin part 2 of the history of FEBCO, we are now going to check in with Bill for more of the rich history that he has waiting for us. So meanwhile, while he's telling you all about the history, I'm going to get prepared to film part 2 outside with the FEBCO pedestal controller. All right, hope you enjoy this journey, and thanks for being here with us today.
Wow, thanks Dave, and thanks for letting me run my mouth on your channel. I'd never pass up that opportunity. So as we were talking in episode 1, Fred Reinecke had made his money in wholesale produce in southwestern Pennsylvania, and by 1920 had relocated to the Los Angeles area. And somewhere back in Pennsylvania in that produce business, he was introduced to sprinkler irrigation. And in 1924, he formulated an agreement with John A. Brooks Company of Detroit to be the distributor for Brooks irrigation products through the western states is how they said it in the contract. And it was a massive territory. He had Washington, Oregon, California, Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. I can't even add up how much money that would be in irrigation today. So a very, very big agreement and a large territory to cover with it. And Brooks had been in business since the early 19-teens, starting in Toledo, Ohio. He was originally a plumber. And he moved to Detroit sometime within the first 10 years of being in the irrigation business, probably fairly early. And he'd patented a number of sprinklers. And so these were the things that Fred Reinecke was installing throughout those western states. And he was fairly successful. Newspapers at the time talk about him landing the contract for Pomona High School, which was actually for a significant amount of money. This is the 1920s, and it went for something like $47,000 in those days dollars. He also irrigated a large hospital in the LA area, and then a lot of homes and places like that. And what he was putting in the ground was Brooks equipment here, and it's kind of unique. It's a flip-top spray head, and I'll show this thing in operation also just for a quick second. And the way it works basically is when it's retracted, the top is covering up the hole that the piston and nozzle comes up through, and then when it's lifted by the water coming into the sprinkler, the lid falls out of the way to the side, and the nozzle opens up, and you'll be able to see that as I show it operating. And so, in fact, this is the full circle version. They also had a part circle version, and these were called the Brooks Deluxe spray head. And they put out a ton of water. And what's neat about these two copies that I have are they actually came to me from California. They were installed in lawns in Central California sometime in the 1930s. So legitimately sold by Fred Reinecke's company. From Brooks. It's got the Brooks patent on it, and I'll show you the patent for these guys as well. And so, he met with a lot of success, and that relationship with Brooks continued as Brooks of California through 1949. And when he gets to 1949, his children are maturing. He has a lot of ideas about automatic irrigation, controls, and piston valves and things of that nature. And so with the expiration of the agreement with Brooks, that's when he founds FEBCO, which is the company we're going to be talking about for the remainder of these episodes. But it's time for me to get out of the way and for you to get a chance to watch Dave at work here. Thanks so much.
Welcome back, everybody, to the FEBCO History Part 2 of a 4-part series. And today we're going to continue on with the water connections onto the FEBCO controller here, and at least get them stubbed out of the controller to where we can run them to the remote valve locations. And we'll connect some power to this thing and see what happens. So let's get started. We'll get started with the electricity first and see how it goes here. I've already wired up a little pigtail to the leads coming out of the back, and I've already got the plug all ready to go with an extension cord, which will work for what we want to do. So we'll plug it in and we'll check out the function here. Okay, we got the power up and running, and it looks like we have success. If you look through this little window right here, you can see the timing motor has actually it's like a little flywheel inside, and you can probably see it just kind of spinning around in there, and that tells you that it's working. So what we'll go ahead and do for the fun of it, we'll go ahead and set the time of day right here and see if it keeps time. So we'll go, let's say, to 12 noon while we're working on the water and so forth. Okay. Since we got our power back on, decided to take a look at that hand starter button I was talking about earlier in part 1, not working, and it wasn't working, but now it is after I sprayed it with some WD-40 of all things. So now the power's on, and it's actually working. And I can tell by right down in here on the electro pack, you can see when I hit the button, you can see the center in there move. And every time I press the button, it advances one of these lugs on the electro pack. Okay, that part's ready. Now let's try some water. So we're going to get started with the supply water going to the controller. And this nice drawing here by FEBCO, it happens to show a wall mount controller, but the same theory applies to a pedestal. And you can see where the supply main's right here and goes to remote valves, and also there's a little branch line that goes here and supplies the water to the controller. And it requires the water, because this is a normally closed system, and it requires the water to go through the controller and push water out to the remote control valves to open them up to make the system work. So we'll start with the supply water first, and then we'll go on to the lines leading out of the solenoids out to the valves. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to connect the supply water to the controller, which is this connection right here. So a little 1/4-inch line that'll run out from underneath this concrete base, which was part of the original equipment from the FEBCO company. And that little water line, 1/4-inch, is going to go to, in this case, a hose bib over here, which is on the same supply pressure that goes to the remote control valves. So let's check this out. So when FEBCO built this, you can see that they're very good about leaving access for all the control tubes to go through the bottom of the concrete. And a little notch at the bottom. I'd raise this controller now up onto a milk crate just to make it easier for me to work on. I'm going to feed this up through the bottom, right on up through here, And this is a 1/4-inch copper line. And we're gonna put it right together right there. Right on the old connection. Yeah, I should be using an end wrench, but this was convenient at the moment, so I'm going to use my channel locks. Okay. So we just turned the water on for the first time to this controller after all these years. And this little temporary plastic 1/4-inch tubing going to the copper. And turned the water on the first time and we got a leaking solenoid. Can't complain too much after all these years, so we'll have to shut it back off and see what we can do to fix it. So I went into my old catalogs of things and found this nice parts breakdown of what the solenoid looks like. There's the body and O-ring, the plunger that goes up and down with the spring behind it, the post, washer, the coil and the outer shell, and the retaining nut. So we'll have to get into there and probably into this area here of the body is probably where there's a clog in there, and see what's going on. So also there happens to be a nice photograph here from the factory of what the controller looked like without its outer shell on. So it's kind of nice to look at. All right, let's get into this repair. So we managed to get the solenoid apart, and it was just probably dirty, full of little rust barnacles over the years. If I can do this without shaking. So here's the coil still attached to the post. You can see a little daylight going through there. That's for the exhaust bleed. This is a normally closed system, so when the coil gets activated, it pops this little plunger this way and lets the water pass through from the water supply through and then into the tubing that would go on out into the remote control valve. When this is de-energized and this slides back out, shuts the water off from the supply, then the water coming back from the remote control valve goes through and bleeds off through the post and then out through the exhaust right there where the daylight is. So we'll put this back together and see if the leak stops. Okay, we're all back together, and I just turned the water back on from our water supply there, and there's no leaks. Why, it's off. So we're going to turn on number 9. That happens to be this particular solenoid number station number. Turn on and off a few times. Seems to be working fine. So that's all there was a little debris in the line and clogged up the little plunger inside the solenoid, and everything's working again. Okay, we'll move on. So what we're going to do, we're going to find where stations 1, 2, 3, 4 are, and we'll get some control tubings up to them. So we'll go up here. Here's zone 1. We'll turn on manually. There's number 1 right there. There's number 2. Here's number 3. Oh, there we go. And there's number 4. So we'll get some control tubings out of there. All right, we're gonna feed up number 1 right through the bottom there. This happens to be 1/8 inch copper tubing. That's what these outlets are on these solenoids. And then from that point, from the controller, we'll go 1/4 inch to the remote control valves. All right, number 1 is done. All right, I got the other 2 already run, and I'm just finishing up the 4th one right now. Right up here. It's the very top one. Okay. Before we go any further, I want to clarify some misinformation that I stated. On the tubing that connects inside the controller on the solenoids is actually 3/16 and not 1/8 inch. So the 3/16 would go to the bottom of the controller and stubbed out, and from that point it'll connect 1/4 inch on out to the remote valves. All right, there's our tubing coming out. They're all connected to the solenoids, all 4 of them. And we're going to try them out here. See if we got any water. So I'm just going to turn them on manually, and let's see what happens. Okay, there's number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. One thing about this controller, you can put on more than one at one time. You can actually turn all 4 of them on. For the fun of it, we can hit the hand starter for a semi-automatic and see what happens down here. So here we go. Yeah, it works. And we go to the next zone. Then the next one. This electro pack actually has a bridge between the 3rd and 4th lug coming out right here. There's a wire connecting the 2, so it would be double the amount of water. Again, on these electro packs, this one happens to be for a 10-minute on the terminals, but they did make them in 5-minute increments or even 3-minute increments. This one happens to be 10 minutes. So this particular one, the 3rd and 4th lug, for regular watering, that would have been 20 minutes of watering time. Okay, since we got the controller pre-plumbed for 4 remote control zones, we're probably close to putting the outer shell back on. And before we do that, we'll check the 24-hour clock one more time, see how it looks. Okay, we can see the 24-hour wheel is still turning on the clock right there. And let's check the time of day. We're about 1 o'clock, so it's about another hour since we started this whole adventure. So the controller clock seems to be doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, we'll put the outer shell on. Alrighty, the outer shell is put back on. I'm going to show you one more little detail here of how to make adjustments to this controller. You might have noticed prior in some other little clips here that there's a little window there on the side of the controller box. So I think this was added on after the original installation for convenience, and you could just take the lid up and this would pull out like that, and then you can get to the mechanism in the inside. So having that little window there on the side of the shroud made it a little convenient to modify the time of day or the days of the week or the watering days on this controller. So anyways, it was something that was, I think, done later after the controller was originally installed, and I think it was a well worth investment at that point in time. Okay, I do believe we've reached the conclusion for part 2 of the series of FEBCO. We have our controller working with water and electricity. All the little bugs are worked out, and it's ready to go for our main operation in part 4. But we have to go to part 3 next and look at the FEBCO remote control valves that I have in storage and see what we can do with them to get them to work. So I look forward to being here with you on that segment as well. And thanks for joining me here today, and we'll see you soon.